Welcome, everybody. My name is Denise Scotto, and I'm with the UNSRC Enlightenment Society. And as many of you know, the Enlightenment Society is a staff club that is made up of many different people who work in the UN system, who are part of the UN greater community, and many interested individuals. We here are aiming to inspire people and provide a lot of different kinds of thought leaders, spiritual leaders, people who were involved in promoting wellness, promoting, of course, the goals and the mission of the United Nations, and the ways that people can create a better world that affects people in their daily lives. It's my privilege to have so many of our UNSRC longstanding members and part of our executive board with us today, and also especially our guest, Thomas Legrand. We're here virtually because the UN has been closed and we're promoting some activities, and we're so glad that you can join us and that you can join us on the replay and to watch and listen to this video. We're excited to have Thomas Legrand with us today because he's coming all the way from France through Zoom, which makes all of this stuff possible for us to be together. If you don't know a little bit about Thomas, I'm just going to give you a blurb that he has a PhD in economics. So he's someone who is highly educated and very educated in the complexity and nuances of math and finance and what all of this stuff means. But, you know, at the same time, he has an incredibly good heart, and a heart that is a heart that's been educated and informed. So his heart and his mind work together. And this joining of the heart and the mind bring a special understanding, an understanding that infuses not just the cold intellect, but infuses with greater inspiration and the ability to give space to that which is unseen in our world. And this is something that Thomas has so beautifully, I think, spoken about, because I had heard him speak back in, I think it was 2019, and it really touched me, and I was very impressed with that. So he then wrote a book, and Thomas Legrand's book is The Politics of Being. So I have it here, and I'm so happy that I have it, that I can show it to you. So aside from having this advanced study in economics, he also has been a student of life, but a student of different world faith traditions and of spirituality. And he lives in France, not far from Plum Village, which was founded by the Vietnamese Buddhist monk who many of us know, Thich Nhat Hanh. So I would like to just give a few remarks about this book and to tell you that I didn't read the whole thing cover to cover. I'm working on it, though, but it's very impressive to me. And the reason why it's so impressive to me is for two things. The table of contents is just done in such a simple way, you know, and I love the way it is. It talks about spiritual values, understanding, life, happiness, love, peace. Things that we at the Enlightenment Society hold so dear and that we use in promoting the work of the UN and of the SDGs and the many other programs that we're involved in. The other thing that I like about this book is that there are many quotes that start off the different chapters and different areas of the book. And one of them is from His Holiness Thich Nhat Hanh, which is, "The way out is in." Pretty profound. Simple and elegant, but reflect and wisdom. Now, given that we just celebrated the 75th anniversary of the independence of India, And Sri Aurobindo and his anniversary and his instrumentality in being such a vehicle for that independence, I'd like to just read a quote that Tomas has in his book from chapter 21 that talks about many nations. And this is from Sri Aurobindo, who many of us know and who know about his intentional community that his partner, the mother, started, Auroville, which is in the area of Pondicherry. So this is from Sri Aurobindo. The primal law and purpose of the individual life is to seek its own self-development. In the same way, the primal law and purpose of society, community, or nation is to seek its own self-fulfillment. It strives brightly to find itself, to become aware within itself of the law and power of its own being, and to fulfill it as perfectly as possible, to realize all its potentialities, to live its own self-revealing life. Feel that power. I know I do. Feel that and let that sink in. Now, turning to the matter at hand, I am so delighted to present our special guest today to you, Thomas Legrand. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Denise, for your beautiful introduction. It's such a pleasure to be with you all. Thank you for joining for this presentation. Yes, I think you have started in your introduction, Denise, to touch on important points, like the subtitle of this book is indeed Wisdom and Science for a New Development Paradigm. So indeed, as the mind and heart needs to come together, we need this right balance and right dialogue between wisdom and science for to deal with the current challenges we are facing. As also you touch upon through this quote of Sri Aurobindo, is also, you know, how spiritual teachings that are usually applied at the individual level can translate very well to also the collective level. And I think that's something I argue throughout the book. I try to demonstrate it throughout the book, that this spiritual wisdom is indeed very relevant to guide our societies. And the way I found out best to express itself was to show that these spiritual values that you have mentioned, Denise, to which I dedicate different chapters, are indeed the reflection of our being, and the most advanced societies, to me, are the ones that honor them. And from these wisdom teachings, but also new science and new application around these spiritual values, we can derive very concrete public policy agendas in many sectors, as I do in the book. So before starting maybe the presentation, I can give you a few words on my journey, which led me to write this book. My spiritual journey maybe not really started, but really took up maybe I don't know, in Mexico, when I was doing at the end of my studies, when I was doing a student exchange. That was 20 years ago, and with a connection with native spirituality, and through that I was able to reconnect deeply with myself, and also really be able to reconnect with the earth. And that was an important starting point for my journey, which led me to write, to work on the environment, on the protection of tropical forest in particular, including with United Nations organization. And as I was really discovering, you know, these teachings, and I was often not only limited to that very tradition which I fell in Mexico, but I was really eager to look for wisdom traditions and how this wisdom can be important for us to understand the happenings of the world. And I was particularly interested by the ones who were already emphasizing that humanity is at a turning point and is and has to undergo a spiritual evolution, as Sri Aurobindo, for example, foretold. And to me, that when I started to look at the world with this lens, it seemed to me a lot of things became clearer. Also, 20 years ago in Mexico, I first heard about this Mayan prophecy of a change in 2012. And as a social scientist, you know, it did make sense that, you know, we can see that all our systems are in crisis, and we need there is a very fundamental change that needs to happen. So, but I was surprised that you never hear of that in the political discussion, in the media, very little in the academia, etc. So I think that was the starting point for writing that book, to share this vision that to me was very useful and relevant in terms of interpreting what's going on. And at the same time, working as an environmentalist in organizations like the UN, I often feel like the dominant development paradigm emphasizing economic growth is often too antagonistic to the work I'm involved in as an environmentalist. And I think that is why we often feel like we cannot achieve so much in terms of sustainability within that current development paradigm. So they understand that we need really a very profound reorientation of our societies. So 10 years ago, I started to the journey of this book, which was published only at the beginning of this year. So it took me 10 years to do a lot of research, and also spend quite some time sitting and with these insights to try to really come at the core of this understanding, and how I can communicate in a very simple yet profound manner. And also observing, you know, how different people, different organizations are approaching this agenda to propose a framework that I feel can integrate all relevant claims and initiatives, because I think that's what is important at the moment, is to, if you want to create a vision that is, you know, that can, and I believe it has to be the new development paradigm. So it's important that we are being able to tap on all the forces that share that kind of general vision. Maybe I will start sharing my screen with this presentation, but it seems I'm not able to. It says Zoom said that that you have deactivated the the screen sharing for participants. Do you know that, Denise? Or maybe you can make me co-host.
Tell me how I could make you a co-host. I'll do that.
You should click on my, probably you should click on my name, you know, when you have the, and on click right, and I think there it should say.
Make co-host, gotcha.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, you got it.
Thanks. Okay.
Welcome, Zoe Chang. Welcome, Loretta. So glad you could make it. Thank you for joining. Wonderful.
Thank you for joining. Yes, indeed. Okay, so let's start with the presentation. So the starting point, I think, is the recognition that we need a cultural evolution. And I think this recognition is growing very, very quickly. Now we even have organizations like UNDP, for example, in 2020, that said that we need a wholesale shift in mindsets. The Earth Charter 20 years ago was already talking about the change of mind and heart. So I think this cultural evolution is of a spiritual nature. And as the Dalai Lama said, the fundamental problem is that at every level, we are giving too much attention to the external material aspects of life while neglecting moral ethics and inner values. So basically, we have invested a lot into our external power, and but we haven't made a corresponding investment in developing our wisdom to be able to manage that power and to manage also to deal with complexity of the world that we have built through this external power. Okay, so I think what we need to understand is that what we are facing is an evolutionary crisis as it happens to individuals. Sometimes, you know, you're facing a dead end, and you need to change in order to move on to a next stage of your evolution. And we need to understand that is also a dialectical process. And as Yuval Noah Harari said, that's why we are on the threshold of both heaven and hell. So the worst and the best are now competing at the moment. The worst may be a system that is no longer fit to deal with the world and how it has become nowadays. And this cultural software, we can call it a story. And as Charles Eisenstein called it, a story of separation, that basically that the root of the modern Western mindset, we could say, and is based on values such as individualism, materialism, reductionism, anthropocentrism, where basically we are told that we are separated from one another, we are separated from nature, and we are supposed to be material self-interest maximizer. And the program, the development program that has come out of this cultural story has been to master nature to fulfill our material needs. And so this story is no longer, it has brought some good things in the past, also some bad things, economic development, for example. But right now it becomes increasingly difficult as it cannot deal with the challenges it has itself created. And following Charles Eisenstein, I believe that we could call the new story that we are waiting for, and that can may not bring heaven, but rather a much more beautiful world, is a story of interbeing, where we realize we are really connected with one another, connected with the earth, and we can thrive only together as one earth family. So we need to basically to evolve the philosophical foundations of our societies. These are philosophical foundations that have been originated in the West, in modernity, but they have now spread throughout the world, and is behind this development paradigm emphasizing economic growth. So there's a realization, right, that we need a new development paradigm. We know that our model is broken, as Ban Ki-moon already said. We need a new one. And there are many proposals, different proposals for a development that would be more sustainable, more human, more qualitative, etc., more integral. And I believe there is a fundamental reorientation behind that, which is basically from having to being. And this is, I build on this sentence from the Earth Charter, which says when basic needs have been met, human development is primarily about being more, not having more. So that was really an important point. I wanted really to see what was a wisdom or spiritual perspective on development. And I think it's well summed up in this very important document that is the Earth Charter. And I've been very surprised that I haven't seen any work trying to develop that vision of what it means to put being as our main collective goal. And I think this being, focus on being, is at least coherent with the cultural evolution observed in rich countries over the last decades, as per Ronald Inglehart, which is responsible of the World Values Survey, which have shown that our societies in rich countries have been moving from materialism to post-materialism, and more fundamentally from survival to self-expression. So for these, new generations, being becomes much more important than having. It reflects this kind of cultural evolution we're already experiencing in high-income countries. Okay, so the politics of being is basically the politics which put being as our main collective goal and means. I'll come back to that, because our spiritual perspective tells us we cannot really separate the goal and the means, and I come back to that. And by being, I mean, and that's very important, I mean, they're all beings. So it's not only about human beings, but all living beings. If I would sum up, what this means, what being means in that case. So I would say it's both being able to become who we are, and so that means society should offer individuals a way to fulfill their healthy aspirations for which they can express themselves, and also realize maybe at a higher level, we could say, or true nature, which I believe more and more emphasized as a relational nature or an interbeing nature. So it's both our truest being, but also highest being. So how can we, our institutions can help cultivate human qualities and virtues? And of course, there's a long lot of philosophical traditions that have emphasized that, from Aristotle to Confucius, etc., that the purpose of societies or the good states is really to help individuals cultivate the virtues. And we will see that what our institutions do at the moment is exactly the contrary, and that's why it's not it can no longer work. And the politics of being is a wisdom-based approach, because wisdom is the one that defines the direction, but also informed by science, which we have also a lot of science that could help us to consciously evolve, but we don't tap into that potential. Also because our political institutions do not create the conditions for the right discussions to happen. So often when we talk about this cultural evolution or spiritual evolution at a collective level, we often take what I see often is a bottom-up perspective, like individuals, so focus on individual change, which at some point will inform, will support change in our societies. Here, my main focus has been on institutions and how they can create the favorable conditions for being, so that in turn individuals are not only happier but also wise enough to adapt and refine such institutions to enter a virtuous circle. So basically, and our institutions, often we use, our institutions are often based on the story of separation that I've presented before. And I built there on the work of Elinor Ostrom, which has been the first woman to receive the Nobel Prize in economics. And when she received that prize, she said that the main lesson she has learned over the 50 years of research, and she's probably the most influenced scholar on institutions. And she said basically that these scholars were assuming that human beings were all selfish, and we were trying to find a way to design institutions that can, kind of minimize, assuming that people are only for their own self-interest, and how we can minimize negative impact, let's say, at the social level. And she said the main lessons that she has learned is that we should rather focus on designing institutions that bring out the best in humans. Mm-hmm. So if we deal with our problems through the mindset or the story, the cultural story of separation, we strengthen, the very problem we are in while trying to fix things. So that's why I say institutions should not only deliver results in their own fields, but also foster the best in humans to support genuine overall progress. I often take, to explain what I mean very concretely, often take the example of justice. So we have one paradigm, which is retributive justice, mm-hmm. Very strong in many countries and the US, and it has created a whole crisis, with so many people in prison, so many delays and costs. And basically it's based on our instinct for retaliation, right? So it's not really cultivating the best in ourselves, right? The alternative paradigm is often presenting to be restorative justice, where people from the community, the victim, the offender, come together to look deeply into what has happened, to listen to one another, and cultivate all these human qualities that make these systems possible, to try to find a way to repair what has been done, a way to heal the heart. So just to give a concrete example, so we can address the same problem of maintaining order in society through one way that helps us cultivate the best in humans, as in restorative justice, or another way that just build on our instinct for retaliation. Okay, so just a quick reflection on a theory of change. So just to highlight that many of our problems are coming from this, as I said, this story of separation, or this disconnected, egocentric individual who feel really separated from other humans and feel separated from nature. And that's why people recognize more and more that our social environmental crises are relational crises. And basically that creates, this, that has created the world we live in, where we have so much capital accumulation, and people wanting to protect their material well-being. We have a lot of environmental and social destruction. And what is important is that psychologists also have shown that people who are more disconnected from themselves and tend to prioritize extrinsic rewards such as money, power, and fame often experience more suffering. So it's not even working for them. On the other side of that graph, we see what mystics from many different cultures have experienced, and that can inform what may be our spiritual nature. And they all talk about a sense of unity or interbeing, of deep interconnection with all that is, and that's why this spiritual evolution can be relevant to address the crises we are facing. If we really feel connected with one another, if we feel connected with nature deeply, that may be already the inner foundations for sustainability. And what is great is that these, so of course we may not many people in societies will experience that ultimate spiritual experience, but at least it can give us a direction. And and what's interesting is that by cultivating the connection to others, the connection to nature, and the connection to oneself, a lot of studies are also telling us that these are the basis for happy life. So really, the good message is that we can live a happier life while addressing, the social, environmental, and human crisis. So as we already mentioned, Denise mentioned some of these words, very sober title of chapters: life, happiness, love, peace, mindfulness. So what's interesting is that each of these values has, in the last decades, become the subject of science. So we increasingly know how to cultivate them at the individual and collective level. And more, these values are entering the political field through many initiatives that you're probably familiar with. Just to name a few, the Buen Vivir, Vivir Bien, or Living Well philosophy, political philosophy in South America. The idea of China committing to become an ecological civilization, the gross national happiness in Bhutan, or how the well-being paradigm becomes more and more influenced in a lot of Western countries. The Charter for Compassion and how cities are becoming compassionate cities. We have also had an important UN resolution on a culture of peace, right? In the UK, we have a lot of members of parliaments from different groups that have advocate for the idea that in this report of UK mindful nation and the potential of mindfulness in public policies in many sectors. So basically, if we bring all of these, all of these are potential. Many of these, I say, can claim to be new development paradigm, and I think what they have in common is that they are really coming from this perspective, highlighting being instead of having, and they can be brought together as part of this politics of being. And I call them spiritual values because I believe these are the ones that enlightened people tend to embody. So they reflect an absolute, or they reflect spirit, let's say. And in philosophy, there is, I found out when trying to make sense of these leads, what they had in common. I found out that, for example, Plato mentioned the transcendental, truth, goodness, and beauty, and they have long been held as a basis for the good society in the Western world. And what's interesting is that when later on the Christian church said they were reflecting the image of God. So even in philosophy, there is this vision that these spiritual values reflect an absolute. No, that's the way to make more tangible an absolute that is beyond words. And even in philosophy, we have Hegel that said that the human history was moving towards greater freedom, because that was the main feature of the spirit. And in some ways, we could say that even material development are a little bit misled, but also can embody a spiritual quality of abundance. So by bringing, all these, if you look at all these science and the different initiatives, you will find recommendations and actual models or systems in many different sectors. So in this book, I propose very concrete policy recommendations in 9 sectors. And I believe these, and I call that a second stage, direct and indirect investment in human development. So direct, for example, in the case of education or mental health. So we really invest directly in inner development. Indirect was, as I said, institutions justice, for example, should be able to help us maintain order in societies, but at the same time, it needs to be framed in a way that allow people who participate in that systems to cultivate these human qualities. What is also interesting when I did all this research was to find out that even people working on these different sectors and are looking for answers to the challenges they are facing in education, for example, and what is the education of the future, and they tend to reach, or at least some tend to reach the same conclusion as I do, because of artificial intelligence, because of the nature of work. It is increasingly emphasized that education should rather focus on characters, life skills to allow people to effectively collaborate, for example, with one another. The knowledge also is evolving so fast that it's not about filling brains with knowledge. It's more to build healthy individuals that have a purpose, that are looking for expressing themselves, and that will be the foundations for success. The same, for example, in the health sector. If you look at the aging population, the fact that the main burden now are chronic disease, and these are linked to our lifestyle, basically. So, and our lifestyles are very much dependent of our mental health. So the mental health becomes so relevant for the future of our health systems, etc., etc. So just the quick conclusion, what I found out also is that healing traumas is a gateway to being. Is even this story of separation we're relying on is really based on is really traumatic in itself, and it prevents to express our true nature. So we really need to work on traumas at the individual, but also at the collective level, including recapitulating what has happened in history to our societies. That is, for example, I believe very important for countries that have been colonized and which have somehow disrupted very much their own pathway. And we need really to understand, what has happened so that they can develop their own pathway. And indeed, with economic growth and GDP, all societies are kind of following the same path. But when it comes to being, all society needs to figure out, needs to reconnect with themselves, with their own traditions, with their own history, to find a pathway for being that is really makes sense for them. So as I said, wisdom and science are the pillar of the politics of being. I try to develop a strong rationale, understandable by decision makers and average citizens, also very clear and simple, but in a simple but integrative conceptual framework, and really come out with both a deep vision, but at the same time, when it comes to implementation, very concrete, down to the earth, based on existing examples, easily replicable, etc. So as someone told me, it's probably the definition of an attempt to define a field of research and action. And it's, of course, a collective endeavor. So you're very much welcome to connect to the website or on social medias and join this work. Okay, so thank you very much. So the book comes with a foreword by Mathieu Ricard, and he's receiving a lot of great endorsements from very important people in that field, such as Federico Mayor, which was the former Director General of UNESCO. So thank you very much, Denise. Thank you all for listening.
You're so welcome. I want to welcome everyone who joined us. Sorry and apologies for the confusion in having you join. I'm so glad that you're here. And I hope that you've had a little bit of a taste of Tomas's book, Politics of Being, and had a chance to listen to a little bit as to how he laid that out. The book, as he said, maybe we can stop the screen share now. The book, as he said, has a beautiful introduction by the Tibetan monk. Well, he's not Tibetan, he's a French monk, Matthew Ricard, who is known for his book on altruism. And I think if I remember correctly, because I've followed Matthew Ricard for some years, he was a translator to the Dalai Lama, to His Holiness, and he lived with him up in the Himalayan region in Dharamsala. So, Matthew Ricard has done a beautiful introduction on this book, and it's, again, so worth getting and taking a look at. Again, it's very rich what you've put together. And one of the things that you said at the beginning that many people didn't have the opportunity to hear is that Tomas's background, he's a PhD in economics. And at the same time, he's such a spiritual being. He spoke about his personal journey. And 20 years ago, how he was in Mexico and he connected to his real soul and really connected to that greater power within himself to be on this journey to infuse these spiritual values into economics, into international policy, and the work of international institutions like the UN and its specialized agencies. And what you said that really, I think, can make an impact that rings true with many of us who are aware about the impact of our actions on the world is how does economic growth, how we see economic growth being antagonistic to the work of environmentalists. How do we care for the earth and at the same time have development, right? How do we have lifestyles that are sustainable to the earth, to sustainable to our societies? This, I think, is profound. And it's what you said. It's a revolution and how we reorient our mind. And where does that come from? But these values that he talked about, peace and love and compassion and understanding. And you spoke about justice and my being trained in having experience as a practicing attorney. You're absolutely right on retributive justice in the United States and many of the Commonwealth countries. And it's about don't do this because you'll get punished. It's about not doing something because of serious negative consequences, and how people are in the United States incarcerated to degrees that are unheard of in other countries. There is a slow movement about this other way, this restorative justice model, and that is gaining more and more traction. But this is where you say, how can we infuse these values where there's real justice, where there's a real reconciliation, where there is a real wholeness of the person who may have made a mistake. We call them a perpetrator, right? But how they can have healing also. Of course, victims and their families. But what about the person, who is the one who had some sort of momentary lapse or a misunderstanding or was forced because of some grave situation and desire? So I think that's a beautiful example. Those two are beautiful examples that we can relate to, I think, in the concrete world today. So I just want to stress those because, again, many of us are dealing with that in the work that we do. And the reminder that you had also of the Earth Charter, I think is so important because this is not new, right? There's a foundation that's been laid. The Earth Charter is a foundation that has built upon so much that's been going on before it, right? So it's not something like it's a reinvention of the wheel. There is a solid and strong foundation that's been laid. And it's just about, I think, creating more and more awareness, and I think it goes back to how people develop life skills and education and how we are talking about education and what that means. So I just wanted to put that into context a little bit before I open it up. So if someone has a question, please, why don't you raise your hand and we can take those questions and have, a discussion. It's not just about a question, it's about a comment too, your experience and what you see or how you see something that, it really resonated with you or what you can offer because of your experience. So let's unmute Zoe Chang. Please unmute Reverend Z.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. And welcome, Thomas. This is really very refreshing for us. During the pandemic, we were really not thinking about these type of really serious thing that can charter where the entire humanity's direction. And some of this thing you talk about, I think some people have some realization already, but the human race is it's like a huge cruise ship. It's very difficult to change course. But once they start realizing that if we go forging ahead, we'll run into some iceberg, this become a must do course of action. You mentioned about in the childhood, you have this different areas that I noticed personal experience being a grandmother. My son and daughter-in-law and a lot of their friends are bringing the way they bring up children are very different from the way I brought them up. They don't want to punish, you say. They wanted to encourage them and redirect them rather than punish them. And I think if we, at the beginning, I was not agreeing with them. I said, you have to set boundary. You have to tell them no. But little by little, they show me how the other way could be successful as well. But I think this is maybe a lot of training and a lot of study has to be put into that because if it's not handled well, it could go to the other wrong direction also. So I think each item you're talking about, there's ample space for further involvement and study for, you could like group sourcing, sort of just collect the group wisdoms, like personal experience, little things. Maybe we're not experts. I think some of these personal, what I just mentioned really gave me a very profound understanding what you were talking about, the punitive, how this impact. It's really not very useful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zoe. Tomas has 2 young daughters that he's raising. So I'm sure that he would love to respond to you about child rearing, because at the end of the day, right, our youngsters are so important to our lives and to society, right? They're an integral part of it, you know, and this is another key. How does one change mindset in terms of child rearing? How are we more conscious and more aware about the impact of our actions and our influence on youngsters who are so vulnerable? Tomas?
Sure, thank you, Zoe. Indeed, no, and that's a very a lot of psychologists, believe that what we become is has a lot to do with the first years of our life. So how we are able to be present, in particular for children, is so important. And their societies are organized very different manner. You look at Sweden, for example, parents have 18 months that they can share between themselves, where they receive, I think, 80% of their salaries or something. In the US, there is no federal policy on family leaves, no? And obviously, that's also a social, political discussions, because that's so important about, allowing children to develop secure attachment, maybe the most important factor for their well-being, but also for their capacity to contribute positively to society. And that's why investments in, there are some studies that say that investments in early childhood can bring a lot of benefits to societies. So myself, as a father, I have 2 young daughters of 4 and 7 years old, and I really see, how my presence is so important for them. And when I mean presence, I mean also mindfulness, as a really a deep practice. And I can feel how much they need it and how much they are disbalanced, when they are lacking a true, authentic presence. So and how much, especially when it's about babies and small children, there's a lot of daily tasks, like bathing and putting clothes on, etc., that may not look so interesting sometimes, but they are a lot of the time we are spending with our children. And by being very present for them at that moment, we are also teaching them to take care of themselves, how important it is to be clean, to be well dressed, etc. And yeah, I think that's really important.
Any other questions or comments that you'd like to make? Anyone like to share?
I don't know if you mentioned earlier about your journey during the earlier talk, because I joined a little late. I'm very curious about what happened in Mexico.
Okay.
If you care to share, if you're not, fine.
Sure. Well, in Mexico, I met people in shamans, let's say, and coming myself from the West, where the world is so disenchanted and we feel so separate also from nature. To me, was really, really profound to feel again that connection. And I remember one day in a ceremony, the day before, the day before I decided to come back to Mexico, because I felt I was learning so much and my heart was really receiving a lot. And that day, the following day, I met a shaman with this group. They basically knocked at the door where I was sleeping in the morning, and then I spent the day with him and his group. And at the end of the day, I was wondering. I asked him about if I could join them for the ceremony in the night. And I was not sure if I really wanted to do it, because I was the last night also with a girlfriend there. But when he said yes, my brother, there was something in his voice that was so special that immediately I know I would join. And that night, I think for the first time, I clearly saw a path that, as you know, with practice, one can move forward on that path. And somehow I immediately recognized that's what I have always looked for. And I was not able to put a name, and it seemed to me that I was able to recognize that day that that was what I was looking for, and that what I would probably focus a lot of my life on going forward.
Thank you very much for sharing. And actually, I think maybe a number of us here, especially in the Enlightenment Society and Feng Shui group, we have similar experience, maybe not the same situation, same. I've invited different shamans to our to give a talk and did a ceremony before. One very impressive one was the Siberian one. Remember that? Yes,
Yeah.
that was a long time ago. Yes, that was really good. Yeah, this is supposed to be very personal. Cannot be really spell out, because even if you spell out, other people will not feel the same way. But the ones when you say that, I immediately click. I know what you're talking about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it's such a blessing that you did have that experience and that encounter, you know, with that shaman, and be able to partake, you know, in that ritual, because it seems like it was such a cathartic moment. It's a once in a lifetime moment, you know, which is like such a blessing to allow you to understand your soul's journey and to be able to just see it. And then credit to you to say yes to that, you know, and to move forward. That takes a lot of courage, and it takes a lot of strength to do it. So we, you know, a lot of gratitude to you for following that, because it can be difficult for many people.
Well, he was ready. You know, if he was not ready, it would not happen.
Yeah. Yep. Well, circumstances also let him be ready to take that opportunity. So, any other comments, questions, sharing? So tell us, Tomas, what are the next steps? Are you going on a special book launch? I know that you will be in New York, and we're in the process of trying to organize a small gathering for you so that people who are here in New York can join us. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, you know, your own future steps that you're taking to get this out in the world.
Sure. And then I've seen also Alfredo, maybe I would like to do a comment, so we can come back to him also. So yes, indeed, I'm about to travel to Mexico in September for a big conference, the Encuentro de Valores, so the value conference, with people invited by people from Charter for Compassion. And I will follow them to Las Vegas also to give some talks, and then from September 17th to September 29th in principle in New York. So glad to, and it would be great to meet some of you. So at the moment, I will work on the translation of the book. So I should probably sign with a good publisher in France, and I will look for also publisher in the US, because I have self-published this book, and also because I wanted to commit as it was. And I know that sometimes it's not easy with a publisher. But right now, I think to reach a wider scale, yes, it's about having good publishers and in different languages, and also I would say to experiment, with governments that would be interested. So I'm looking forward to that, to really move to action. And start collaborating with different organizations in that space. So that's that's where I am. And but also I know that I'm just following, what wants to happen. I've put a lot of work and a lot of aspiration and energy into bringing this book where it is now. But I also feel, that I need also to follow what wants to happen, and I've kind of done my part until now, and now I'm more like following and supporting what wants to happen, rather than keeping pushing, I would say.
Exciting! It's such an exciting time. Alfredo.
Thomas, thank you very much. I'm so happy to see you. I think this is a great topic, and I'm looking forward to read the book. You asked me to say something. I like to give some background. I am the only Mayan priest in Chile. I am a Mayan priest for the last 30 years. So I understand we are talking about shamans, Mexico, and inner transformation. The second thing is that I wrote an article many, many years ago. I was just beginning working at the World Bank. And the article was The Foundation of Spiritual Economics. And my colleagues almost killed me. This guy is cuckoo. It's crazy. What is he talking about? So when you say, going from the having to the being, which is a very fundamental issue, I was told that, you are nuts. But this was not the first time I've been told that I'm nuts. I decided to run for president of Chile with a spiritual platform in politics. So many people said, again, this guy is out of his mind. What does politics has to do with being, with spirituality? I mean, here we are in a different business. Just to give you some reaction to the presentation, not to the book, because I have not read the book. And I will be very, very quickly in setting the point, and if someone wants me to explain more, I'm happy to do so. I think one of the key issues you mentioned today is the passage from individual to collective. I think this is so fundamental when for the first time in human history, we are living a planetary society. It's not only the country collective, it's not just the community collective. We're talking about a planetary collective, and very few people are talking about it. And we are confused. We think that market economics will unite us, or politics, or, I don't know, a third world war. I don't know what people think really is going to unite us. But the question is how that bridge is built. And I'm speaking only from the spiritual point of view. I'm not talking about the economic point of view. In Buddhism, there is a very fundamental spiritual law that says that everything that surges has a total correlate one-to-one with a certain level of consciousness. That is to say, if consciousness does not shift or change or rises whatever you wanted to search might not search, simply because this is not there. So if we want a new economics, we need a new consciousness. It's not a slogan. You know, I used to say it a little bit, and I say, well, maybe that's slogan. But after so many years practicing Buddhism, it's a very fundamental point. Second issue is that the movement from having to being needs another third part, having, being, becoming. And the problem is that we have not dealt with a lot of attention on the becoming. You know, how to become? You know, it's not only just the being in the sense of being aware of. I give you an example. Let's say that I want to deal with compassion. So from having to compassion to the being of compassion, it requires the self-realization, my self-realization of compassion. But in the becoming, we get to be committed simultaneously, not only to self-realized compassion, but to create a compassionate society. And I having this discussion with many academics in the United States with new books on leadership. You know, they say, oh, no, you know, the being in leadership. Yeah, but what is the becoming? And this is something that I've been writing about, and I'm interested in continue sort of exchanging more on this. I was in the room when the Earth Charter was written in Rio. And it was very interesting because there was a little bit of a fight between the indigenous peoples and the people representing the Rockefeller Foundation and all these people who were behind this. In fact, the first fight came from the fact that the indigenous people didn't understand English, and they didn't have translators for them. So they say, you know, this is not our Earth Charter. But I think it's an excellent piece of work. It's a very inspiring piece of work. I'm so happy you have it in the book. I'd love to see what you say about it. But what if we ever get to that point of the Earth Charter? We will not be in so many situations now in the world. The other thing is that the issue here is really it's not just wisdom. I wish we get there. I don't even get to wisdom, but you know, there is something very fundamental, which is this consciousness. That is a word that is very difficult for people to digest. Nobody knows what it is and how really this is part and parcel of economics. I remember when I met Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, you know, the yogi of the Beatles. He was my first guru, you know, many years ago, many decades ago. And Maharishi said to me, what is it? How do you define economics? So I said, I will lecture this guru, you know, my ego. I'll tell him what economics is all about, you know. And I said, I found a cute sentence, you know, to start with. And I said, economics is the science of scarcity, material scarcity. What we try to do is to predict human behavior under conditions of material scarcity. And I was continuing, and he stopped me right there. I said, this is why economics is doing so bad. This is terrible. You said scarcity. He said, I will teach you the economics of abundance. When economists understand that human consciousness is an inner variable of the economic calculus, then economics will be the science of abundance and not the science of scarcity. So I have spent all my years, I still don't understand everything, but I spent all my years on this phrase, you know, how to make economics the science of abundance. How to make economics the practice of something, inverted commas, that will allow us to, all of us, to inner transform. You know, this is very difficult. This is very difficult. And when I was a politician, I had to confront many situations where there were no answers for many things. I say that people will not treat the earth properly until and unless they self-realize that the earth is a being. And this is not a slogan. It took me at least 20 years of meditation practice to get there and see, oh, wow, it has energy, it has behavior, it has memory, it has consciousness. And I said it in my political campaigns, people say, this guy is crazy. I said, there is no difference between me and water. And people say, it's crazy. No, I am water. There's no difference between me and the intelligence of a carrot. Because if actually, when I drink a carrot juice, I am in the ultramolecular level, we're exchanging intelligence, it's all the rest, sort of disappears. So if the carrot is not as intelligent or more intelligent than I am, I'll become of the intelligence of the carrot. And I think it's the other way around. Every time I drink a carrot juice, I find myself in an ecstasy. It's fantastic. My body accepts it. But if we do not understand that the earth, or self-realize that the earth is a being like us, and we're part of it, it becomes very, very difficult for people to understand many of the things we're talking about. I am not surprised that Matthew Ricard signed your book, because it's an excellent topic of your book. It's a fundamental topic, but also Matthew Ricard, I know him very well. I think it's, he has self-realized so many things. It's not just a little sentence, and I love what you're doing. Count on me on anything you might desire. I am writing now several books on very similar matters. I think we have a lot in common. And the politics of being will happen when the being of politics changes. Gracias.
Well, Alfredo, you never fail to make me realize that there is so much work we need to do individually, I need to do, to deepen my understanding of my connection to all life on this precious planet. And another courageous man speaking this kind of truth to so many people, right? Knowing that people are going to say, questa gente è pazzo, right? He's nuts. So, in front of how many people when you're a politician running for president, right? So, so much gratitude to you for putting that out there, for throwing the seeds and letting those just percolate, to see where they go, to see how they bloom, to see how they affect people. So 2 inspiring men at this gathering today. Tomas, I don't know if you have any concluding words you'd like to leave us with?
Sure, Denise, maybe I can, thanks a lot, Alfredo, who has just spoken very well on many topics, and indeed we have a lot of common, because almost all what you said I mentioned and develop in the book. Now you said the earth as a being, so it's really I have a chapter on nature, and it's pretty much focusing on what is the change of paradigm that needs to happen, and it's very much in terms of being able to see the earth as a being who has rights, nature's rights, and that we also need to take care, as indigenous people do, in some subtle ways, to nourish also its energy. And yeah, I talk about in my chapter on economics, on economy, on abundance, and how, you know, in the digital economy also, how we need to review, for example, intellectual property rights, and how taking care of the commons, such as the environment, is fundamental for fostering abundance. And yeah, no, as you said, from Buddhism, from you know, if we need an outer change, we need an inner change, and that's you know, I have a chapter on called understanding, but it's on system thinking, no, and Donella Meadows recognized that the most important, powerful leverage for systems change is about changing paradigm, mental models, etc. It's about changing consciousness. And by the way, Denise, when you were asking, you know, what's in the future for me, for the last 2 years or so, I've been working for UNDP as a technical advisor of an initiative that is called the Conscious Food Systems Alliance, where really very much focus on this inner change as an enabler of sustainability in the food and agriculture sector. So it's mentioning it also because of you know, we have so many people close to the UN. So people are telling us that using such a language is very new, and indeed it's maybe a one of a kind initiative at the moment in the UN systems, but we are more and more people, you know, are recognizing that we need this kind of discussions, and we need to work. When we do, for example, to me it's crazy that when we do a development project, we look at economy, we look at the social issues, we look at environment, but we don't look at the culture. And in the long term, that's what may have the most impact for sustainability. So I think, you know, this agenda under different names, you know, we have also to be skillful with the names. Maybe I'm talking about being and really trying to bring this very deep perspective. Some people will talk about human flourishing and could be an entry door, no? And even some people have a more shallow view on happiness. So I'm building on that, but also going deeper. So trying to, you know, to show how a lot of what people are starting to see, and that we can use these doors to bring a deeper perspective about the politics of being, which is, I believe, you know, will have to be our new development paradigm. And I think it will happen. I'm not sure when, but I would say it's, as I said in the conclusion of the book, I think it's meant to be. So it will happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We so appreciated you being our special guest and for bringing up a lot of the values that we at the Enlightenment Society and our greater groups really treasure and try to promote when we are speaking with people and engaging with people in the UN system and the greater UN community. At this time, you know, so many people are still experiencing COVID-19, you know, and other things. And it's been, I think, something of a period for some people for isolation, for some people reflection, you know. And when we talk about what Alfredo said, the becoming aspect, right? I mean, this is the thing, you know, we call it inner engineering, searching inside the self. But, you know, how does one really have that kind of shift in consciousness and that change? You know, this is one of the great mysteries. It really is. And it's something that I think, you know, we can, you know, really try to ask for guidance. And if we pray to those that we believe, you know, are the supreme absolute or have that capacity to provide divine inspiration. But at the end of the day, you know, I think that these kinds of dialogues and us getting together, you know, to share information, but to share experiences, you know, and really sitting with each other, you know, in a real present way, I think that this is so useful and so key, you know. So I'm hoping that we can continue this, especially when you come to New York, you know, and we can continue because we learn from one another also too, you know, and we build an energy at the same time. So I want to just thank you all for coming, and thank you, Tomas, for joining us and being our special guest. And I want to leave with another quote that I really resonated with, that is in his book on chapter 10, Light. And this is from the Lao Tzu. So from Lao Tzu. So I thought I was gonna say the Tao Te Ching, but anyway, this is from Lao Tzu. So let me read it. The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The nameless is the origin of heaven and earth. The named is the mother of myriad things. Thus, constantly without desire, one observes its essence. Constantly with desire, one observes its manifestations. These two emerge together, but differ in name. The unity is said to be the mystery of mysteries, the door to all wonders. Politics of Being. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining. I'm going to end this recording now and wish everyone a beautiful, beautiful day. May peace prevail on earth.
Thank you.
Thank you.